You're like, you were one of the pioneers in this whole thing. I've been hearing about you a long time, man. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's I appreciate you saying that. I feel like I'm doing the same job I did right out of high school. It's just right out of high school. I kind of started Film Thread at 19, and like it's like I've had other jobs. I've had many other jobs, but I've always had like my side gig has always been Film Thread. I think this is the first time these last couple of years where it's just sort of like this is my 100% focus. So.
Well, you're doing something right, man, because it's really it's one of those things that just keeps coming up at the right time. And as I said, I'm honored to be here. I've been following and hearing about you for a long time, so it means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. First of all, I feel bad that I didn't know about you and your work and discovered you.
You're part of the majority.
I saw you did. Because I subscribe to obviously a lot of different YouTube channels, but Film Courage is one of my favorites.
They're great.
And you did a series of interviews on there where I just kept trying to find you. And I was like, oh my God. The thing that blew my mind was how brutally honest you were about the industry. I mean, you broke it down, the amount of bullshit that you've encountered, the fact that you had like basically a screenplay stolen from you.
Oh no, dude, I've had 3 stolen, but you know.
But the fact that you would, okay, it's one thing because I have friends and I've heard these kinds of stories, but they would never tell those stories publicly. And what was brilliant about basically what I'm saying to my audience is you should go watch Shane's interviews on Film Courage, which is a channel. They recently had me on and it was like a therapy session. And I was there for like 3 hours and they asked me a lot of really pointed in a very serious way. I felt like I was on public television. So when you're in that environment, in that little enclosed space, it gets very heady, but that's how I found you. And then,
oh, wow.
And then I've heard about your new book, which I'm just going to fully admit I haven't read yet.
I haven't either. It's okay.
Okay. That's good. No, well, I listen to a lot of books just because I spend too much time on a screen, you know, like I tend to listen to books.
It's on audio now.
See, I'm just going to buy it on Audible. They're not a sponsor. They're not a sponsor, but that's how I'm very well listened.
Well, I'll tell you something. I went to do the recording and it was during COVID and I was prepping to do Double Threat, which was a film we shot November through January during the heat of COVID. And I think it took me 3 hours to get through a paragraph. And it was at like 3 o'clock in the morning and I don't read well out loud. And I was just getting frustrated. And God bless Ted Jonas, who's a voiceover actor who did it. And what I love about Ted is he didn't try to mimic my tongue-in-cheek way I talk or anything. He's very Ferris Bueller. It was kind of funny that the engineer that did it, Cliff Calabro, I've known Cliff 30 years. Cliff called me one day and he said, dude, it sounds like I'm listening to Ferris Bueller. This is awesome. So I was like, oh, good. I'm glad somebody likes it. So yeah, Ted did a great job for us. And yeah, it's available wherever you can get the book, you know, Amazon, a couple of the other platforms, and you can pick it up on audio if that's better for you.
Wait, what's the name of the book? And can you show it to us? I'm going to go.
I'll give you a shameless plug. It's right here. It's What You Don't Learn in Film School. And that's the book. And it's, I think the audio version is actually What They Don't Teach You in Film School. They went for a little variation. So it's the same thing. Ted reads it from cover to cover. He does a great job. The forward is by Academy Award winning, Grammy, Emmy, Tony winning Paul Williams, who everybody knows, and Adam Kane, who's one of the most sought after directors in Hollywood, wrote the introduction, which was really meant a lot to me that those two guys stepped up and wrote what they did. And Ted reads all of that. And yeah, it was really cool to get that on audio. So that just came out about a month ago.
That's great. I feel like those are the best kind of advice are the things they don't teach you in film school. Because I almost feel like everything they could teach you in film school, you can kind of get from books. Just a quick aside. I really wanted to go to USC film school because that's where George Lucas went. And I wanted to go there as a kid, being a Star Wars fan. could not afford to go. I mean, it's a rich kid's school, let's be honest. I come from a lower middle class family raised by a single mom who I begged on a trip to the West Coast to visit my uncle. I said, can we just go to the campus of USC? And I bought all of the books that I could afford from the USC film program at the time. This is like in the 80s, right? Every single, and then the ones I couldn't afford to buy, they were very expensive. I made a list, and then I said, I'm going to vow to read every book that the kids at USC read. Because if I couldn't afford that education, I could at least read those books. Ironically, years later, I wrote a book called The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide, which is now required reading as part of independent film studies at places like AFM and NYU and whatnot. So I've done speaking gigs. Later on, I did speaking gig at USC and told that story that now you have to read my book about film festivals. So I feel like books such as yours and what they don't teach you in film school, those are the most important pieces of advice, because technical stuff is always going to change, right? Editing software, everything's digital now, like all that stuff is teachable, and get the instruction manual. That's your film school. But the kind of things to actually succeed in the industry, that's the kind of advice that I think is the most useful, like what you did in your series on Film Courage, and then what I assume is in the book. So,
I'll tell you how the book came about was I get a lot of calls from filmmakers who are working, people that are making movies and trying to find a home for them, or they're running into logistic issues. And I got a call one day. The call went like 3.5 hours. I didn't even know the guy. He was a friend of a friend, really nice guy. Had just done a $2 million film, and he was in trouble with some things and was having trouble getting the film finished creatively and getting it out, and also later on in life finding a home for it. And I hung up the phone after talking to him one day for about 3 or 4 hours. My wife came storming in, God bless her, and she said, okay, so you're giving away all this information all the time to people, most in which you don't even know. And are you getting a thank you on the film? Are they sending you consulting money? What's going on here? And I said, well, I do it because I care. I want to see filmmakers do well. And she said, why don't you just write a goddamn book? And she walked out of the room. And honestly, the book was started that night, I think, out of, you trying to repent for my wasting so much of my time. And I was finished in less than 3 weeks from cover to cover. It was 200 pages. And it was just thinking about all the things that I know they don't teach in film school. I don't have any issues with film school. I think a lot of them could be good. I think if you don't have any connections in the industry to learn from the bottom up, or to shadow somebody, or to learn, I think they could be very useful. What I am against is the 6-figure debt that a lot of these students leave with without any plan other than, hey, maybe you'll be the next Quentin Tarantino or Damien Chazelle, which is really a problem. And so the book was written really fast. I found a great editor, Marissa, and I sent her the book, and she said, I don't want to change a word of it, but it's all over the place. She said, there's stuff in chapter 2 that should be in chapter 6, and stuff in 5 that should be in 1. She goes, I need about 2 or 3 weeks to shuffle the deck and just kind of keep it as a flow. So it because my mind, is a lot of us creative people do, you're constantly just firing off on all different places. So I'll be talking about pre-production, and I'll have a distribution note, and then I'll talk about casting all in the same sentence. She's like, what are you doing to me? So it was really cool. She knew nothing about our industry, and was able to, which I preferred. She was able to make a sense of it and keep it flowing. And I think she did a really good job. A lot of the credit goes to Marissa Foglia for shuffling this thing and making it, something that made sense.
Well, that's something that I certainly struggle with in my projects is getting that structure, because I've struggled with having just some form of ADD my whole life.
Sure.
But it's a high functioning in the sense that, like, I'm able to juggle a lot of different projects. My girlfriend refers to it as you're flitting about. You're constantly flitting about. She doesn't realize by the end of the day, these 6 projects I'm working on little by little, like by the end of the day, they get complete. So I at least make some form of progress. But what I noticed in your interview, and then doing my research about you, is you're very accomplished, obviously. But what I'm so impressed with are the truth that you drop, this sort of like it blows my mind that like you are in the position that you're in, that you're able to say it. It's the kind of things that I wish, because when I read the trades, I have a very highly tuned bullshit detector. This just comes from being from Detroit, right? Like I look and I'm like, this is full of shit. I know this person didn't get paid this. I mean, I know just even from in my minor dealings with studios is they take 18 months to pay any invoice that you give them. If they pay,
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. I have a friend who regularly works for one of the major studios that says these contracts they make you sign aren't worth the paper they're printed on. It's such BS. I mean, it's almost like there's this like secret, like you're in the industry, you're working for these companies, and it's just such a criminal operation at times in terms of how, I mean, you can read all about even like a lot of the distributors that just like how they pay. It's
all in the book, man. It's all there. It's all there.
Exactly. It's just like, so how, like what keeps, I mean, is it like, especially when it comes to the trades, and I just see like, this is just lie after lie after lie. And like, there's just very little truth. I feel like at least what I have attempted to do with Film Thread is just manage, first of all, support and champion those filmmakers where I can see like diamonds in the rough. Like this is like, this filmmaker's got talent. They didn't have money, but they've got talent, and you can see it through the sort of budgetary, restrictions that they had. And then just trying to manage people's expectations of, you're going to get a lot of shit. Then you're going to finally reach a point where you can tell other people to go fuck themselves. So,
well, that's very well said. I think what the one thing I've learned in my years of being in this industry is, if you want to make a living in it, you can be a steady earner. It doesn't ever go the way you think it's going to go. You always have to have plan A, B, C, D, E, and F in the industry. But the problem is people's plan B is to not work in the industry. If I'm not going to be a writer or director, I'm out. No. Go work as an assistant cameraman. Go work in sound. Go work as a grip, because you're going to be around it. You're going to make these great contacts. But my point is that I find it's like what you said. Things take so long to start generating money. There seems to be a 3 to 5 year current of what it takes. So things that I did years ago are starting to work now, or things that I did a year ago are starting to work now, because there is, especially since COVID, everything is so delayed right now. But you're right. It's not unless you win the lotto or get zapped by lightning. It's not an immediate instant gratification industry. You have to really make a lifelong commitment to understand the ebbs and flows and the pattern that people pay on. I learned on my first commercial gig, their contract said they could pay me 90 days after the first quarter of the invoice. So if you turn that invoice in the first day of the quarter, they've got that for 3 months, and then they can wait another 90 days. You're waiting, 180 days to get paid for doing an assistant camera job that, when you're coming up at 16, 17 years old, that's your livelihood. That's your car payment or your expenses. And if people really, it's like you said, learn to kind of realize how this business pays out, and the control that the puppet masters have on how you get paid, you could do okay. It's about the patience and understanding how to map that out.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about like having some job within the industry. I think that is incredibly useful, because I don't think I've ever had only one job. I've always had a job, then I'm writing a book, or I have a job and I'm doing this thing. I've never, but I have tried to have it relate. I mean, I was had a career in television on camera for a spell, and that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot there. But I had a manager once who basically said to me, he said, "Look, movies are a hobby for the rich. That's what they are. That's what the movies are. And television is a job, right?" So, I mean, I think that's one way of looking at it. Even if you're like, I mean, someone like Ava DuVernay, like started as a publicist, right?
Right.
Then she became a filmmaker. I actually think that's a very good training ground to begin as a publicist. But I think just being around the industry, that's incredibly useful. In terms of the book, can you tell me like some of the I don't know, just some of the greatest hits of like what people can expect in your book? I feel like I got a glimpse of it from seeing your interview on Film Courage.
You know what's interesting is, God bless them, they're great. They read the book and we talked about it, and we did the interview during COVID, and we weren't going to do it until after. And then they had reached out at one point and said, "We really want to do this with you. Are you up for it?" So I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And we were at the height of the pandemic. I think it was about August or September of last year. And they put me in a room and basically just stayed clear and set the cameras and the mic, and we just kind of spitballed and just went as we went. And a lot of it really wasn't, basically what I cover in the book is first off is it's the business of the business. And the one thing that I do cover in the book is from concept to delivery, if you're an independent filmmaker, because what I learned in all the years of trying to help people or mentor or guide other filmmakers is their questions range from, what do I want to make, to, okay, now it's done, what do I do with it? And once it's done, how do I make sure it went to the right home, or how do I monitor that? And it's really a gloves off approach, but everything in it is just my personal experience. It's not, this is the only way. It's not saying that other ways may not work for people. My goal in doing the book was strictly to say, look, I've been at this a long time. I've been rich. I've been poor. I like rich better, but and I've got a lot of scars from my journey. And if I can help you guys avoid a few pitfalls, a few detours, a few roads that are going to be closed or be extra bumpy and some broken bones and all that fun stuff, check out the book. It's a quick read. It's just, I think what I think people are getting out of it is what not to do, or, oh, I never thought of that. I really get into pitching to independent investors to try to raise independent capital. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know. I talk about making offers and presenting a project to an actor. I'm so tired of seeing everybody's pitch deck with the Brad Pitts and the Leonardo DiCaprios on it for their little movies. God bless you. I hope you guys can get them. But so many of these filmmakers go into investors, they set the bar so impossibly high that if they're even remotely going to get a secondary meeting, they've just walked into failure. So what I do is I talk about how to create a presentation for private equity, what the private equity is thinking before you walk in the room, what he's thinking while you're in the room, and what they're thinking the minute you leave, and how to continue that relationship. Most of my private equity investors, those relationships are 15, 20, 30 years deep before they ever invested a dime. And what happens is so many of these filmmakers, me included, we're so myopic, we're so tunnel vision, we seek out rich people and try to go in for the kill. And that nothing could be worse than trying to raise independent capital than doing that. And I talk about how to nurture relationships. And yes, you will have opportunity on your journey to meet people that hey, so-and-so knows this guy, he's willing to take a meeting with you. Will you take a meeting? So you don't have time to nurture a relationship. But the thing to remember is these people are a lot smarter than we are if they're legitimate. They know that they hold the keys to the kingdom for what you want to do. And they're thinking 2 years, 3 years down the road. You're thinking about the movie and the meeting. They're not thinking about the movie or the meeting. They're thinking about, where are we going to be in a lawsuit? Where are we going to be in 3 years when I call this guy on the carpet and say, I haven't made a dime, where's my money? They're just thinking so far. And also, you have to keep in mind, they have business managers and accountants that get paid well to stop them from investing in the three terrible things to invest in. And that's nightclubs and restaurants, the music industry, or the film industry. And so you have a lot of things stacked against you going in. And I talk about how to work that through and how to walk out of that room moving forward. And a big part of it is, a lot of new filmmakers set these budgets on these projects that they want to do. And I watch filmmakers for 20, 30 years trying to get a movie made where they've set these unrealistic budgets to try to get with independent capital. And you look at these projects, you look at their budgets, and you see, if you just came back down to reality, retooled a few things in your script, got rid of these crazy budgets, you could get this done for a fraction of what you want to get. It's not, for so many filmmakers, they go in with this dollar figure. That's really not what it's about. At least it wasn't for me. I always look at it as, this is a project I want to do. Find out where this person's comfort level is in investing, and figuring out a way to make that project work for this person. And if it doesn't, find another project. It's all about building your library, building your content. And it always leads to something else. And that's what people forget.
Do you think that investors, I have found this, maybe this is mostly in the film festival world. I'm talking about the sort of Sundance elites, right? Like when you go, I feel like a lot of the investors there are really just, They just want to go to a party.
That's it.
They just want to know that it's mostly the investment is they know it's a tax write-off. They will never recoup. Secondly, they're really there to tell their friends at the country club that they invested in a movie, kind of like buying a painting from a famous artist. It's another sort of feather in their cap. And then it's just about like, is this movie going to get into Sundance because I need to be able to go to the premiere at Sundance and then just, rub shoulders with whoever the people in the cast are. Do you think that that's partially drives the decision making for some people looking to invest in an indie film?
I have an entire chapter dedicated to the dance.
So that dance is real. That dance is real then. Okay.
Well, I just think I no disrespect to Sundance. It is the cream of the crop for the festivals. There's the reality factor that 30,000 films a year are submitted. They only select so many. And if you do the math on how many are on the submission committee, and when the opening of submissions is to when they close them, I don't know many people that can see 200 to 900 movies a week. So you have to look at the reality. I never use film festivals or accolades or anything in a pitch. For me, with investors, it's about investing in something real, something tangible, something exciting, and something that can do very well if it's done properly. And people forget that the entertainment industry and film is, I think, our second largest export from this country. And I have friends that are very deep pocket guys and girls, and I'd never invest in the film industry. I know so-and-so. And I always say, well, isn't so-and-so like your richest friend? Oh, yeah. Well, that's how he makes his living. It can't be that bad. It's about a business. It's about, as my brother, who's a very successful businessman, he always told me it's not about a grand slam every time you make a movie. It's about base hits, doubles, and the occasional home run. And that's what investors are. I always think the biggest problem is when filmmakers go and they say, look at Blair Witch, look at Paranormal Activity, look at Sling Blade. Don't look at those films. Those are one in a gazillion. Talk about the little films that people don't know about that were made for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 and made $2 million. That is a good return. It's like if I came to you and you knew nothing about the industry and I said to you, do you want to invest in a housing project? You can buy this house down the road. It's going to cost you $500,000, but you're going to make $25 million on it in 2 years. You're going to probably realize I'm full of bull. On the flip side, if I came in and said, look, if you want to invest $400,000 or $500,000 in this house, I think within a year and a half to 2 years, we could flip that for maybe about $800,000 or $900,000. It's not a bad return, and it's realistic. And that's where I really try to push people to understand is when you go in with all this fluff and all the sizzle and no steak, which is the latest saying now, investors see right through that and they smell the bullshit a mile away. They want nothing to do with it. They want comps that are realistic. And of course, you can always mention, wouldn't it be great if we had a sling blade or a saw in our hands? That wouldn't suck. But the chances are so minimal. Let's just keep everything down to planet Earth, get these people interested. They're going to buy into your passion, your knowledge. One thing I really stress in my book, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. And there's two reasons for that. The most successful business relationship I ever had was birthed on the term, I don't know. I was asked a question from the lawyer who was in the room. He asked me a question I didn't know the answer to. And I said, I don't know. But I will get the information and get back to you. And what that did was two things. It let them know I wasn't going to bullshit my way to try to tell them something they wanted to hear. I wasn't going to pull facts and figures out of my rear end. But what it really did is it gave me a reason to contact them the next day and say, I got that information you asked about during our meeting. It opened up an entire second meeting on the phone. They called 2 days later and said, you know what? We like this. Let's try this and see how it goes. And you know what? We ended up making 11 films together over the years. I mean, who would have thunk, and as creative people, we're constantly tap dancing and trying to prove our value and our worth and bullshit our way through a circumstance. That I think is the worst thing you should do in an investor meeting.
I think that's such a great point, and it's such a small thing that you did, but I think it shows that you you followed through and you kept your promise. And also the thing about not bullshitting, I mean, I moved to Los Angeles in 89 from Detroit. And I can't tell you the amount of people that are just, this is a talker. This is someone who's full of shit. This is someone who doesn't follow through. And yet whenever I would make a promise to someone, it's like, hey, I'm going to just, even if it's just like, I'm going to mail you a magazine or a book that I promised to do. And then when I do it, it's like I performed a magic trick, because they're so used to people that are full of shit. And I think, yeah, it's crazy. And I even would apply this to, we live at a time where we're almost expected to have an opinion about everything. And you know what? I don't have an opinion about every topic. Some things I just don't have an opinion about. You know what? I don't know enough about that to have a real informed opinion. So I abstain from commenting on many things that I don't feel fully informed or qualified to comment on. But now, especially, I guess this is mostly social media, is everyone has an opinion about everything. And I feel like maybe we need less opinions about things.
I agree. I talk about that in the book. I cover everything from being on a set as a crew member or a leader. I talk about how to communicate with your distributors, your investors, your actors, your partners. And there's a story in there where I talk about how important it is to not have an opinion on everything. Sometimes the best thing to do is not say anything. And I'll give you an example. I had the pleasure and the honor of working with Zalman King for 20 years. And Zalman passed a number of years ago. I was working on his last film. And we went into pre-production about a week before we started rolling cameras. Zalman pulled me into his office with David Saunders, his partner, and he said, Zalman has terminal cancer. He probably won't make it through post. This is going to be his last dance. So you can't tell anybody. We ask that you don't. And just wanted you to know what's happening. Every Wednesday he's going to be late. He's getting cancer treatment, and then hopefully he'll show up afterward on Wednesday. So we kind of worked around that. Sadly, while we were shooting the film, Steve Jobs passed away during production. And, my biggest pet peeve is as soon as the director yells cut, everybody grabs their phone. God forbid they can't see Instagram or Twitter and see what's going on. Half the crew, most of the people that aren't working, while the cameras are rolling, oh, Steve Jobs just died. And all the fodder started hitting. Everybody had an opinion on it. And there was a lot of jokes, well, I guess money can't buy everything. There's a bunch of tasteless jokes. And I'm sitting here watching Zalman, who's 3 feet to my left, and nobody on the set knew he was in the same situation. And sadly, I think about 6 weeks after we wrapped, he passed. And I talk about that and how important it is to just shut your mouth. But the point was, David called me in to production afterward, and he said, there's a few people that need not return. And those people were terminated, and we found other people that were better at keeping their mouths shut.
I feel like those kinds of distractions are contributing to. I feel like we're losing our identity as American cinema, right? As the theatrical as well. I mean, now COVID, it's hard to really compare this, but even pre-COVID, people were going to movies less. I mean, the Hollywood likes to report these big box office returns, but the truth of the matter is fewer people are going to the movies. The only place where the theatrical business is growing is China, which has a growing middle class, right? And I feel like what that's contributed to is big blockbusters are not. They're geared towards a global market and not necessarily the American. I think the last great era of American cinema was the 70s. And I know a lot of people bemoan that, maybe people that are older like myself, but I feel like it's an opportunity. This is an opportunity for, in a way, independent film to counter program to what the studios, which I feel like have gotten to a point where it used to be that there was one checkbox that needed to be checked, which was entertainment. Fun, right? And now there's so many check boxes where there are marketing concerns, global concerns, political concerns. There's just so many concerns now to making a big blockbuster that I think it's an opportunity for independent filmmakers to hone in on what Hollywood is obliged to do all these things, has to do these things. And I believe that Hollywood films have no excuse to fail. You've got people that are the top of their game in every category, and you've got access to money. Independent films can be a little bit rougher around the edges and can address the things that Hollywood is not going to be able to do anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious your thoughts about that sort of independent cinema, in contrast to where big blockbusters are going. As you hear people basically, talking about like Hollywood is dying.
Well, that's very well said. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's why a lot of people ask me, they say, how come you went the independent route? You've had some studio success, you've had some network success. Why are you doing these indies with little budgets? Well, first and foremost, for me, it's about working with people I care about. It's about working with people that I love and telling stories I want to tell, or that I think makes sense for an investor. And as I've gone down the road further and further in the independent world, I found what I love, and that's doing the gritty, low budget action comedy that just works. And I'm not saying the films are always good or they're great, but it's what we enjoy making. There's a market for it. We're never going to touch the $200 million CGI, spandex wearing guys and girls in capes and bracelets. And that's cool. That's not what we do, but we're turned on by, like you said, those films of the 70s, like Hoopers, Smokey and the Bandit, Any Which Way You Can, or Any Which Way But Loose. And those are the kind of movies moving forward that we're really excited about making, because we want to pay homage to that. We know there's an audience for that. And we just want to do what we love to do. And our backers understand where our passion is. They're not, trying to chase something like the studio system or why aren't you making superhero or those kind of movies? They dig what we want to do. And that's what's fun. I couldn't agree more with you. I think, when you were talking about how Hollywood likes to report on their great box office numbers, it's always China reports, and it's what you see every day. And, good on them. That's great. But people are buying bigger home entertainment systems. Good Lord. My wife and I were at Costco the other day. You could buy a 70-inch TV for $600, $700. I mean, what's the matter with that? A little 5.1. Don't have to get your seat kicked behind you by the annoying kid sitting in the row behind you and listen to other people. And you just sit at the privacy of your own home, watch a movie the way you want to watch it.
I'm just curious if the industry is going to bounce back. In terms of the theatrical industry. I mean, it never really mattered the bottom line for indie films. I mean, the reason to open in New York and LA were to get reviewed in the publications of record, right? The New York Times.
Right, of course.
Whatnot. So you have to open there theatrically. But I kind of feel like the rules have been rewritten, as have many rules post-pandemic, right, have been rewritten. And I feel like just struggle is kind of, that's par for the course. I mean, indie filmmakers were struggling before the pandemic. That's never going to change. And the business model towards success, which is at least some being able to report some profit, right, for an indie film, that to me is success. You made money. So then now, how are the rules being rewritten? And is there an opportunity for indies to excel in this new environment where Hollywood is kind of, I hate to say this, Hollywood's kind of back to square one. And I feel that I'm not sure, are we going to have a movie that makes $1 billion at the box office this year? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen in the year 2021. Will not happen. That used to be like just par for the course. New Star Wars movie, new Marvel movie, some anomaly film that comes out like Joker. It's going to make $1 billion, right? It was almost expected at that point, $1 billion worldwide. I don't know that one film will do that this year. So where is the industry theatrically, and where is there an opportunity for independents to capitalize on, I believe, the continuing diversified taste of the audience? And by that, I mean that I've always said, and I preach this through doing Film Thread, is you have to have a diversified media diet. Meaning I love the Marvel movies, an occasional Star Wars movie here and there, or Pixar, whatever, your Disney, Marvel, Pixar, which I think dominates the trades but I think that you need to balance that diet with a documentary, an indie documentary, and a small indie film, a little indie sci-fi movie like called Shifter or some, which I think is a great small little indie time travel film. Like, just like there's so many good indie movies. And my mission with what I just trying to get audiences to balance their diet? Where is there an opportunity? This is the longest question I will ever ask you, Shane. My apologies in advance. But what are your thoughts on all of that? Are we going to see a movie that makes $1 billion theatrically this year worldwide? And where is there an opportunity for independents to capitalize on having spent a year in lockdown and now people are finally starting to get out? Is there an opportunity for independents to thrive and survive with even greater levels of success?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that if there was ever a time, it's now. This is when us indie rats need to get out and prove that we can make good content, engaging content at a low budget. I think, we did a film during the pandemic that was, literally backing up a little bit. I was sitting in this room at the beginning of September, and I realized everybody was kind of washing 2020 away. And I said, wait a minute, we got 3.5 months. We can look in a rearview mirror and either say COVID kicked our ass or we made it our bitch. I am not going to let this thing win. Called up my writing partner, CJ Wally. I said, dude, I think I can put together a couple of bucks. I got somebody who's willing to roll the dice. You want to roll the dice with me and just do this thing? He goes, I'm all in. We had a script in 6 days. We cast and crewed this thing up and went out and made a full-blown feature November, December, into January. And I'm really proud of it. We didn't, obviously some of our locations were a little bit hindered because it was COVID. We shot at a film ranch, but that was the rule, is make this thing feel big. Canon stepped up and gave us cameras and lenses. They were so excited somebody was making a movie. We got Don Olivieri to come out, Danielle C. Ryan, Matthew Lawrence, and they were all just desperate to get out of the house. And my point in all of that is what I realized is our crew was, I work with a small crew anyway, but our crew was about a half of what we normally work with. Our budget was 1/3 of what we normally worked with. It didn't matter. And at the end of the day, watching the cut of the film as it nears its locked picture, you don't feel like anybody was living in a pandemic. There's no excuse. We can show Hollywood proper, us indie rats can show the world this can be done at a small scale and still be fun, action-packed, engaging, good production value. And I think if we do that, we can really thrive now more than ever because so many people were shut down for so long. And just like you said, those billion-dollar blockbusters are going to take a while to start circulating again. We have a timeline right now. We have a window of time that I think we can really flex our muscles and show the world what we're capable of. And I hope we get that 70s kick in the pants where people are realizing what we have. And now, unlike the 70s, we have endless ways for our content to get out there. The world can truly see what us little guys are doing. And that's exciting to me. Let's not even get into all the different streaming platforms and all the different media platforms that we have. But good Lord, it's such a great time to be an independent filmmaker. It's I think, a better time than it has been in 30 or 40 years.
I 100% agree. I think that, and what I've always loved about independent film is it's very entrepreneurial, but not everybody has that entrepreneur brain and mindset, because you're not clocking in for a company, right? When you're an entrepreneur, it's all on you. You've got to be very self-motivated, right? You've got to be, you've just got to be filled with all of that passion where you're driving toward, that goal, whatever it's finish the day, it's finish the cut, it's finish the script, whatever it is. There's no boss telling you. So it's a certain kind of personality and mindset to be a successful independent filmmaker. How do you get that mindset? I've kind of just always, I grew up I always had a job from the time I was 9. In fact, I had newspaper routes from the time I was 9 years old through 19. And always had money. I always had money because I earned money. I was like, I didn't know I was kind of poor at the time, being raised by a single mom.
Sure.
And if I wanted an Aurora model kit of King Kong, and
so you can get it.
Now you can get
some lawns, boy.
You can still get them now. But I had to earn all of that because if I wanted to buy, a Cinefantastique magazine, I had to earn a living. I had to earn cash on newspaper routes. Then I ended up working restaurants and then eventually a video store. I never. So
wait, what was that last job you had?
video store.
I don't know what that is.
Yes, that's right.
There you
Oh
go.
my God. You got to watch that documentary, The Last Blockbuster, about the last Blockbuster video store.
One in Alaska.
Well, no, it's in Bend, Oregon is the last one. There was one in Alaska though. But now there's it's down to one. Bend, Oregon. Yeah, it's
I'm gonna check that out.
The Last Blockbuster. It's on Netflix right now. So really, really brilliant pop culture
I'm
documentary.
gonna write that down.
The Last
Blockbuster. I'm gonna write it down.
It'll be, look, it's gonna bring back a lot of memories for you. I was not a big Blockbuster fan, to be frank. I worked at an independent video store in Michigan called Thomas Video, and which was very successful because they carried adult films. So
fun.
Blockbuster did not, and Blockbuster didn't carry unrated films. We carried unrated films like John Waters movies and whatnot.
Oh wow.
My film education was a video store, but
well, hey, that's a great place to learn.
But how do you get that? Like, I don't think that people realize, it's maybe something that's not spoken out loud. It should just be obvious, is if you're an independent filmmaker, you are an entrepreneur. You decide. No one hired you. No one asked for this movie that you made.
Nope.
No one wanted it. No one wanted your movie. You decided to do it. How do you get that motivation? What makes because I do believe that there is, just having done a lot of hiring in my time on a print, when Film Threat was a print magazine in the 90s, among other jobs I've done where I built teams. You see the personalities. You see, like, this person, they're clocking in, they're doing their 9 to 5, good at their job, but when they walk out the door, they don't give a shit.
They're done.
As an entrepreneur, and you're never not done. You could be Saturday night at 10 p.m. Something happens, my website goes down. I gotta deal with the problem, right?
Yeah. No, it's I talk about in the book is pre-production is the most difficult time for me. I over pre-produce a film, so production goes smooth, but that pre-production time is so grueling. It's nonstop. It's brutal. And, I talk about, if you can get through that and do a proper pre-production, everything else should find its place. But it's about knowing what you're signing up for. It's having that entrepreneurial mind. It's the person sitting at their desk with a pencil and a phone and needing to create a widget and sell it. Nobody asked for it. You're selling, if you're dealing with it, getting financing for your project, you're dealing with the passion and the hypothetical of this is what it's going to look like. It's not tangible yet. And going out and creating from words on a page to the end, here it is. And you have to really look at the big picture. You have to realize, like what I say is, when I dive into a picture, it's 9 to 18 months of my life. It is. So you have to realize, you could treat it as a love affair that goes 18 months, or you could treat it as a prison sentence. The choice is yours. The work still has to be done. Are you ready to sign up for it? Every time, incidentally, I'm in pre-production, I always swear it'll be my last one. I cannot do this again. I am done. This is grueling. I'm getting older. It's working at a faster pace. Things are harder. It's amazing with how much communication abilities we have as a society, how horrible people are with communicating. And so I go through the pre-production beating, as I call it, and say, I'm never doing this again. I'm going to, go toil soil or do something, raise cattle or do whatever other than this. And then I get on set. I start getting around my actors and my crew that I love, that we work together. And then I'm in post-production. You go through the post-production heartaches of all the things you didn't get. And then the film, as you're through that process, you start missing everybody on set again. And the only way to get back there is to go through the process again. And, you have to have an attitude of, this is going to be painstaking. Hate it now, love the results later, good, bad, or indifferent. And I've never regretted making a film, and I've done some stinkers in my day. It's about the experience for me. It's about the relationships. It's about where it takes you to the next level. So yeah, if you're not a self-starter, if you're not somebody who can realize long-term what you're signing up for, it's probably not the business for you. You, as you know, because you started Film Threat, 30 years ago, as a print magazine, and look, here we are today doing this via remote, and you're the face of the franchise. It's about you leading the charge, getting your interviews together, setting it up and making it happen and getting it out for the world to see. So you're making these movies probably a lot more often than I am. You're doing this almost every day. So I think people need to realize that it's something you have to have the passion to do. You have to have the balls to do, and you have to have the nerve to do. It's a very tough way to live. I'm not going to lie to you or sugarcoat it. It's great to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, hey, good morning, filmmaker. Hey, that's great. But you have to look at the big picture and realize the work that goes into it. It's tireless. I get up, especially now working from home. My feet hit the floor by 5:30 and I'm working by 6. And it's usually until my wife pries me away and says, it's dinner time, hon. It's almost 7:30, 8 o'clock. We got to wrap this up. And then what she knows when I'm in pre-production, those days are usually 20-hour days.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's 7 days a week. Everything else in pre-production, the world outside is not my problem.
I love that dedication, that work ethic.
I don't know any other way. And like you, I was, I had I still do. I have a wonderful stepmom who just turned 80. And boy, when my older brothers went to work at 16, it didn't matter that I was 12, get your ass out, go get a job. So I started working like you at a young age to earn. I was weed whacking lawns. I was working for Vasa Park at their soda fountain, and there was no child labor laws back then, or if they were, nobody paid attention to them. So, I get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, jump in a truck, go to Dodger Stadium and be out there in the sweltering heat until dark, pouring sodas to these private parties that they'd have. And, at the end of the week, you get a $138 paycheck, and that was how I came up as well. And plus we lived on property with animals. So I had to get up extra early and feed the animals and do my chores. So that's all I know is just getting up. The only way something gets done is by, getting off your ass and doing it. Or as somebody taught me once in a construction job I was holding, well, the 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. Let's get walking, boys. And that's making movies.
It's weird because as much as, you can get all sorts of kernels of wisdom and advice, it really comes down to, it's just hard work. That's it. It's just hard work. When I think back at I worked factories when I was in Detroit. I shoveled sidewalks, mowed lawns, delivered newspapers for a decade. I mean, it was even I was in college and I had a newspaper route. I mean, but then I had the disposable money, and then it meant something. And then when I did projects, I poured my own money into those projects. I mean, that's how I was able to launch Film Threat. Is I worked jobs I hated to do. I think the job at the video store, though, I did like, because
of course, how could you not?
I love that because it was a constant conversation about movies. But also I think that while I've read so many books about film, I've gotten a lot of great knowledge from books not related to film. I read a book when I was in college once called Marketing Warfare, just about the different rivalries between the major companies like Coke and Pepsi and Burger King, McDonald's. And that taught me a lot about marketing, right? Having that be a part of what you're doing. And when I look back at Film Threat and what it's a lot of that was, that was marketing knowledge I'd put in there. And then other books I've read just about being an entrepreneur, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. That's a great book. I mean, I still remember anecdotes from that, and The 4-Hour Work Week, which I think is another really useful one. Those sort of non-film books where I'm just looking at it through the lens of I'm going to see how to apply this to processes, not only at Film Threat and how I'm able to have this media entity, whatever it is, and come up with processes so that we can compete toe to toe with major media outlets that I don't have a tenth of their budget.
Right.
It's those things I think are really useful. And I can't wait to read your book. I cannot wait to read it. I know I gotta wrap up. Dude, I could talk to you for hours.
Well, have me back. I'd be honored to come back anytime. And maybe after you read the book, it's funny. I will say another reason that I wrote the book is I spent many years going to different film schools and different, workshops. And, I learned that there was common things that these students weren't being taught. And the reason I called the book what I did was to basically say, look, as we talked about earlier, it's not about what film school is good or bad for different people. It's what you're not going to learn. It's not in the curriculum. And there's certain life skills, there's certain basics that they just don't cover because it's not part of the curriculum. And it's amazing what they don't teach. And it's not, I don't fault them for it. There's just things that, Canada, it's amazing. Before you can get a union card, you have to go through a protocol and a series of classes on basic set protocol, not sitting in the director's chair, how to talk on a radio, how to read a call sheet. Do you know how many, we went through a phase for 10 years. We refused to hire any film school graduates on our sets because they were the worst of the worst. That's unacceptable. And what we realized is, and what I realized is over 86% of people who get a degree in film will never earn a dime in this industry. They get out of school, they don't have a job, they have no connections or anybody to follow up and help them, mentor them in a path once they've left the nest, and they've got this unbelievable amount of debt. They got to move in with a friend or pay a car payment, and then they go out and get a job, and then they find another job. And then the next thing you know, 2-3 years go by and they haven't worked in our industry and they've just found another path. They get married, they have a kid. Those dreams are dead. And that's unacceptable. And I will tell you, I've had many department chairs tell me off the record, you can't quote me, when I say 86% of the people that graduate schools will never earn a dime in this industry, they consider that very conservative. So I want to turn the tide with that. I think it's unacceptable. When you go to law school or medical school, that's not an option. It shouldn't be an option in our industry. And all I want to do is just give people fundamental tools to just succeed. And it doesn't happen overnight. If you're looking for instant gratification, this is not going to be a good run for you. Understand it is a marathon, not a sprint. And if people can get that through their head and realize they do have to get their hands dirty, they are not going to be above the line on the call sheet, and that they are not going to be talked to nicely or treated very well, and just get out there and grunt it out, things will start to turn around.
Well, we could not end on a better note, but you are going to be back because
anytime.
I want to have you back after I've read the book.
Okay.
And then additionally, we do these things at Film. We started doing this when the first lockdown happened. We do watch parties. I don't know if you're interested in doing one of those, where we take a film that you've made, we all watch it together, and then you comment on the movie. It's like a live DVD commentary, but you're taking questions from the audience. We get like 2,500 people watching. So
wow, I love it.
Yeah, so let's we can talk offline. Our conversation started out so great, I forgot to do the title sequence for my show. Who cares? But I'll throw out
just call it it.
I'll just call it. Yeah, we'll just whatever. It doesn't matter. But Shane, Stanley, thank you so much. Do you have a website or a place people can get more or follow you? I think I started following you on social media. So.
Oh, God bless you. Well, yeah, as far as a website, it's shanestanley.net. You could go to the book. It's whatyoudon'tlearninfilmschool.com, just as the same thing as the title. I'm on social media. I'm not super active because I'm busy. But I hate to say that. I forget to check these things, but I try as often as I can. I'm official Shane Stanley, I think, on Instagram, or Shane Stanley official. It's one of the two. And then on Twitter, it's just my name, @Shane Stanley. So I'm not hard to find, and I hope to hear from you guys. I do like getting emails and hearing from people. I try to be as interactive as I can when people reach out.
Well, I will hit you up, and I can't wait to read it. Shane, dude, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
It's been an honor for me. Thank you for having me. It means a lot. It's great to finally connect with you, and I hope we get to do it again.
We will. That's a guarantee.
Great. Thanks, man.